So I'm doing a sort of a quick hit here on a game that I just finished and really enjoyed. This is Conquest of Paradise, the deluxe edition from GMT. I got this, I think I put it on P500 back when it came out, and which was, what's the year in there, 2016. So 3 years later, finally got around to playing it. And I am almost sort of disappointed with myself that I waited this long to actually play it. Because it was really, really enjoyable. It's a light treatment. See the subtitle there, Empire Building in Polynesia. I'm not sure how much any of these particular tribes or groups really were into the concept of empire, but they did obviously expand their reach to the different island groups and continents even. But it's historically themed, loosely historically based on kind of how these tribes and groups migrated about the South Pacific. But it is not a simulation, really, in any sense of the word. Very, very simple rule set. The rules are only, at least the basic rules are 10 pages, another page of advanced rules, and then another page of solitaire rules. So, the total page number for the rule book, including the index and the bibliography, is, 16 pages. So, simple system, simple rules. What I liked about it, and what I enjoyed the most, is the exploration factor of it. And you can see here, this is my finished board state. When you start out, you're starting out with, I did a 4-player. I didn't use the solo rules. I just played each side. So it's not really the best game to solo because there is hidden information. Well, first of all, okay, there's 4. When you're doing 4 players, you've got the 2 main starting villages, and these would be the 2 you'd use in just a 2-player game. You've got Samoa and Tonga here, and then for a 4-player game, you add in Raiatea over here, and then Hiva or Hiva. I guess I can look it up. There's actually a pronunciation. I's or E pronounced like E, so it would be Hiva. But Hiva is the other island group. So these 2 starting islands start with 3 village spaces on them. They actually have 4 village spaces, but you have to buy the cultivated land for the 4th space to add the 4th village, whereas these 2, the 3 and 4-player islands, only have 3. And in fact, Raiatea only has 2 that you can start with, and you have to upgrade the 3rd one. Actually, you have to do that for both of them. So these 2 islands already start at a slight disadvantage because you can only build 3 villages on them. So that means they have to get their expansion started earlier. And expansion, you can see all these little counters on some of these hexes, and then some have removable tiles. For exploration, you'll send your explorers out, and each power has one of these large counters that serve as their explorers. Each one has a name just purely for historical purposes. It's not, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a little historical tidbit. And the game does it's got a whole book of just designer's notes that talk about who these explorers were. Describes each explorer, and then it goes through and describes each of the cards that are in the game. And there's these art and culture cards that you can use to get yourself more victory points. And you basically, during the build phase, you can buy these cards, and they provide you usually some sort of game advantage, be it via combat, exploration points, whatever. And then they also some will each provide points, some provide more than others. But the designer's notes describe what the stuff is on all these cards, which I really like. Sort of a coin type thing where it explains the historical significance behind each of the titles on the cards, which is pretty cool. So what you do, you send out your explorer in the first phase of the game, which is you're in your turn sequence here. You do your exploration, then you do movement and battle, then you do builds, and then you calculate victory points at the end of each turn. And there'll be as many turns as it takes to get to the requisite number of victory points for somebody to win. There's no fixed number of turns. But during your explore phase, you'll send your explorers out, and you will end up drawing chits, and you can see there's a bunch left here. There's still a few left in the cup at the end. But it's a chit draw to see what you get. You'll either discover islands, and then this is, your guys can't just explore forever. The number of knots in the back of each counter will tell you how much they've exhausted themselves exploring a particular hex. But they find an island group, so you'll end up drawing one of these hexes out of a bag or out of the box top. I grabbed a bag from another game and just drew it out of that. But as you go through these chits, you'll either find islands or you'll find empty ocean. Not sure how I got an empty ocean there, because they would have all been placed on the map at some point. The number of these counters didn't quite work out to the number of spaces that were on the map, which is weird. Based on the setup that I did, there was one island tile you take out of the game because I think it shows up on a card or something like that. But I ended up, at some point, I was pulling island group tiles out of there when there were no island groups left in the bag, which seemed weird to me. But I just chucked them aside and kept exploring. But anyway, how the chits work is that you end up with a random island placement. Now, the game board has the historic location of each of these islands actually printed on the board, but you'll end up drawing them randomly. So, stuff's not going to go where it was historically. I'm not sure if there was a historical variant somewhere that you could actually have the islands where they are, but that would seem to defeat the purpose of the random exploration nature of the game, and it would make for a fixed game that probably wouldn't be very exciting if everybody knows where all the islands are. What makes the game exciting is the fact that you're exploring, and you could, like in the case of Raiatea here, they ended up with a lot of these uninhabitable atolls around them, and only 3 island groups. And this isn't close. They tried to get over here, and you can see the Tonga natives got there first to Tahiti. They only had really this one island and this island here that were close to them and available for them. And this one's pretty dangerous because it's close to these guys, and they might not like the Raiateans encroaching on their territory. But you can see there's a lot of just open ocean around them. Hiva didn't have a lot of islands either, but they had more, at least. You can see more, at least, than the Raiateans had. And these island groups over here were initially explored by the Samoans and not by the Raiateans, who focused all over here and just could not get the draws that they needed to get some close islands. Whereas you can see here, the Tongans kind of really lucked out, first of all, because they got New Zealand here, which is not called New Zealand, it's Aotearoa. But then when you draw New Zealand, then you pull this other tile, which is the South Island, out, and this gives you 7 potential villages all at once. So, they got just super lucky there. I mean, they got a couple of smaller island groups in addition to that, but this was their bread and butter right here. Because otherwise, for them, you can see these pre-explored areas on the map over here, but these have a lot of natives, local forces that you have to kill. And it's tough to get your military up to a point where you can easily take, 3, or you can see here with Fiji. Fiji had 4 local natives to take out. And I attacked Fiji once with the Samoans, and I think I had maybe just over 2-to-1. I think I had 9 troops, a mix of war bands and war canoes attacking Fiji. It was like 9-4, maybe 10-4. And just got my ass handed to me. And so I came back again with like 14 or 15 guys, more like a 3-to-1 odds, and was finally able to take Fiji with the Samoans. And that ended up, it was kind of like the deciding factor, because for the longest part of the game, the Tongans were ahead on victory points. And you can see the victory point track here. In a 4-player game, the game ends when somebody hits 22 victory points. And the Tongans did it, but the Samoans leapfrogged past them, and it's whoever has the most points after somebody reaches 22. And so these 2 guys broke 22 on the same turn, but the Samoans had just enough more because they'd picked up Fiji and had expanded into these 2 other island groups. And you get a victory point not only for villages, but then for each island group that you control past your home island group. So the Samoans were able to pull it out in the end, but they did take Fiji, and I didn't do really any combat between the different tribes, mainly because I was learning the game and figuring out what the best ways were to amass points. You don't get victory points from winning combat, so some of the cards maybe provide boosts in that regard. But otherwise, you're going to be fighting mainly to gain territory or to prevent somebody from encroaching on your territory. So even though I could have, probably with the Tongans, I could have tried to hit the Samoan home islands when they were doing their big invasion of Fiji. I did leave just enough guys here on the home islands to make it questionable whether they'd be able to win. And once I did the fight on Fiji and realized, wow, simply coming in with twice as many guys isn't really going to be enough for you. Even though the odds would, in theory, favor it, because you've got whatever it is, it's about a 50-50 chance that it's going to either affect your guys or their guys. Where's the rolls? There's the battle result rolls. So on a 1, attacker removed, 2, attacker panics, 3, attacker panics. So a guy either dies if you roll a 1, or on a 2 or 3, he's removed from the combat and is combat ineffective for the remainder of that combat. So, and then on a 4 or 5, the same thing happens to the defender, and on a 6, the defender's removed. So it's very even odds, but I just rolled horribly. I was just rolling nothing but 1s and 2s on like the first 6 or 7 combat rounds of the Samoan invasion of Fiji the first time, and even the second time, I think I had 1 guy left. I was able to save 1 village, because when you attack these neutral islands, you just populate with some generic villages, and you have to keep those villages and switch them to yours. You have to have at least that many guys survive the combat, either not killed or not panicked. And I think I had 1 battle group left out of the 13 or 14 that I sent there on that second combat, and ended up saving just 1 village because I only had 1 guy left. So you just have to bring overwhelming force in. So, and you can see just based on that it took so long to kind of get built up militarily to even try against Fiji. And Fiji is the toughest one. I don't think none of these other ones have 4 local natives, but so I could have gone after some of these softer targets early in the game, but I wanted the big Fiji. That's 3 islands. Vanuatu is the other one that would be, because that's got potentially 4. Same thing down here on whatever it is, Bismarck. But this gets into the malaria area, which is an advanced rule, but you can potentially kill off some of your own people if you start to settle the malaria islands, and it ends up transmitting it back to your own island group. So it was interesting to learn. That's one reason why I wasn't fighting amongst the tribes, just because I was trying to learn different strategies, different ways to approach building up the villages and fleets and stuff like that. So your transport is handled by these transport canoes, and they work kind of similar to transport transport lines or lines of supply in your typical hex encounter war game, where you just run a chain of them. And so once you've got everything connected with your transport canoes, then when you build, you can combine all the incomes from all these different places based on your transport network. So that's pretty cool. It forces you to keep track of where your transport canoes are. It also makes them a vulnerability if your opponents want to try and bring their war canoes out, which are these guys. If they want to bring their war canoes out and try and break somebody's line of transport. Because the other thing you can do is move your guy. You see you've got some colonists or something here that you want to get to a far island chain to settle a village. If you build your transport canoe network first, on your movement turn, you can do your transit moves, which is where you can just move everybody within your supply line or your transport line with the transport canoes in one move, so you can beam your colonists right from all over the way over to there. So that's a nice way to help. So you spend a lot of time building up these transport lines and stuff before you colonize, or you can race your guys out there and try and colonize before your opponents do. It becomes one of those delicate balance type things that you're trying to figure out what to do. So one of the other cool things about the game, and I love the exploration aspect. I love the fact that some areas got lucky with these really great island groups and other areas were struggling. It really kind of determines the flow of the game, because if somebody does get hosed like the Ryateans did here and has no islands to start putting villages on, villages are your main source of points and income, and so it becomes hard for them. If you fall behind early, it's harder and harder to catch up, because your opponents are building bigger, and they have so many points per turn to use. They're building bigger and bigger fleets and bigger military, and you're stuck with the same 5 villages or whatever that you've got in a couple of island groups. You're not getting very much income out of that. It's taking you longer to do things. So they may the flow of the game can be impacted, because these guys may say, well, there's no islands around us, we're just going to have to go all military and invade somebody somewhere. Whereas these other people may be focusing more on colonization and settlement and not military, and so you have one power, even though it's the weaker power, building up their military and then trying to aggressively reach out and take somebody else's island groups. It can really determine and affect the flow of the game, which I really like. So that's cool. And then over here, you've got these little sweet potato pictures here. One of the things you can do, usually after you're kind of done exploring all these other hexes, is send your explorers over here and then off into the unknown ocean to try and get to South America, where they'll get sweet potatoes, and you can end up getting some extra victory points at the end of the game out of the potatoes. You can get 2 extra victory points with the little potato thing. Only the Ryateans actually managed to do that, the green player here. Once I realized I was short on islands, I sent their explorer out to find the sweet potatoes, and he was the only one that successfully did it. You have to make a series of dice rolls to get through each of these hexes and reach the South American hexes to get the sweet potatoes and help your civilization with the delicious, sustainable food of sweet potatoes. So that's pretty much the game. It's largely you're exploring in the early stages of the game, and then it's a lot of frantic building up of villages and military and transport networks kind of in the later stages of the game. So and then the Ryateans were spending a lot of their points, since they weren't buying villages because they didn't have any islands to do it on. They were spending a lot of points on cards, trying to boost some victory points that way, and they kind of struck out on 3 of them where they got 0 cards. These all they did was either help them hurt their opponent, or this helped them too, and there wasn't any invasion. So had they done a lot more fighting, they probably would have been pretty good, because they had this warrior leader, which counts as an extra unit. They had good defense here. They had the canoes that could move a lot further. Well, not a lot. I think it's just an extra. Yeah, they can move an extra. Your transport and war canoes can move an extra hex, which is handy though, because that you can launch an invasion quickly from a more distant island that way. So just a lot of fun just exploring. And then I loved, as I'd pick up each island group, I'd pick up the designer's notes, and the designer's notes not only goes through each card and what each card does, but also goes through each every single one of these. Even the uninhabitable atolls goes through and gives historic, geographic, etc. information on each of the island groups that's in the game, which is really cool. So every time I'd flip one of these up, I'd read about it, read about it historically. There's things you've got over here. The heathens settled Pitcairn Island, which some of you may recognize as the island where the mutineers of the Bounty ended up settling. Very remote, isolated island, and lived there for generations. I mean, the people that are there now are still descendants of the mutineers from the HMS Bounty. So stuff like that's pretty cool. And there's Easter Island, and all these well known. There's Midway for World War II fans. All of these recognizable and notable islands and island groups from the South Pacific. So just a lot of fun. Again, a light treatment, not a lot of thought, not a lot of calculations and that kind of thing going on. You can move through turns pretty quickly. That's why I liked it. It played really fast. Was really addictive. Kind of a one more turn sort of thing. Exploration games tend to do that. Civilization on the PC famously like that, where you just keep wanting to play one more turn just to get that one thing you want to get built, or to explore that one area you want to explore. This does had a very similar feel for me, and because it moves so quickly, it was easy to whip right through turns pretty quickly. So just a lot of fun. Definitely recommended checking it out. And GMT component wise, it's awesome. Got great wooden blocks, terrific artwork. Just looking at all the different cards, the Polynesian artwork and stuff like that. Really great counter artwork. Same way that sort of real nice hand drawn elements all come into play on the counters as well. It's got the deluxe, the brown core thick deluxe counters. The board's gorgeous. Great artwork on that as well. Simple, functional, no problems understanding it. The rules, very easy to follow, very clear. Artwork on the box, awesome. And I think they completely redid the artwork for the deluxe edition, because I think the original box was brown or something like that. But just awesome picture on the front of the box. And this was from McGowan. He wasn't doing the clip art as much in these later years. He was doing sort of a single representative era appropriate image for whatever game he was doing. But even here, he got fonts and colors and associated artwork. There's your Easter Island statues. All of it. It's more of a standard back of the GMT box, but artwork and components just really fantastic. The whole package just dripping with theme and very evocative, and great, fast, easy to follow gameplay. This is definitely something I would recommend for a family or for kids. It's just because the rules are easy. It's easily taught, easy to understand, even I think for younger kids, and probably the 11 or 12 range or up would probably be able to handle it and follow along. So definitely a family game. I'm sure my wife would enjoy it. I plan on seeing if she and maybe another couple in our gaming group want to play some evening. It would definitely easily be playable on an evening, and I think would be a lot of fun, just because of all the history and interesting stuff that you can learn as you go through the game. So highly recommended Conquest of Paradise from GMT.